Welcome to iAccessVO with Brian Fischler and Ed Plumacher. Making it happen with VoiceOver accessibility. And now, here's Brian and Ed.
Welcome back to yet another episode of iAccessVO. Ed, I got a new little toy here.
Yes, you did, man. That's pretty awesome, though. I was glad to hear you got it on time, even though you were a little frustrated by the delivery mechanism.
Well, UPS does not exactly have a great history with me. So, you know, the first day you could pre-order, there I am. I'm on Apple's on the app and everything in the apps, you know, on the iPhone. And I signed up for in-store delivery. So I was planning on going to the Apple store on 5th Avenue. I saw that was selected. And I happened to notice from the email notifications that it kept saying your package will be delivered on Friday. So I called up Apple, and finally they said, oh, no, we ran out of appointments for picking up phones, so we're shipping it to you.
Oh, so they ran out of appointments, not that they ran out of phones.
Yeah, no, they ran out of appointment spots to pick up your phone, and they just unilaterally decided, we're going to ship it to you.
Well, you know, Brian, you should have requested the 5th Avenue store that's open 24/7. You could have gone in at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're up.
Yeah, I know. I would have gone in. And don't they know who we are? We're iAccessVO. We're
Yeah, you know what? That and your Metro card get you a ride on the subway. So
yeah. So no.
You know what? But that brought up an interesting topic you and I had a little earlier today, because we've heard of some people who have ordered the phones and they're still waiting 2 to 3 weeks because they're ordering their phones through their carriers. And I don't think a lot of people realize you can order your phone directly through Apple and just designate your carrier.
Yeah, because I had to pay the tax, the $60 or so dollars. But everything just rolls. I mean, my whole bill plan is through AT&T, and it's just an option. You know, I have the AT&T plan where you get to pay, a lot of money every month for the privilege to upgrade your phone every year.
Well, some of us have that disposable income and some of us don't, Brian. So I guess you have the luxury to afford that.
Well, as the welcome in guy for iAccessVO, they pay me the big bucks here.
Hey, it's good to get it from somewhere.
Yeah, but no, I'm enjoying it. You know, it's taking some getting used to. The home button's different. Did you know that, Ed?
I haven't seen it yet, but I can tell by our first conversation, you were like, this is going to take some getting used to.
Well, let me move back a few steps. I'm never going to see it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we understand that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it definitely takes some getting. You know, I had my aunt over here today, and she's like, oh, let me check out the new iPhone 7 because she's an iPhone user, and why Siri keep launching? She kept, pressing. I'm like, they changed the home. Oh no! So she keeps pressing it down, and Siri keeps launching right away and everything. So, even the sighted community is gonna have to get used to an all new home button. And I think I'm getting used to it. It's been a few days now, and last night. One of my apps, TiVo, that I use if I'm watching something on the iPhone, I need to turn VoiceOver off because I could fast forward through the commercials with VoiceOver turned off, so flicking down on the screen. And I've gotten used to the new button and just using that triple click to turn VoiceOver off real quickly.
Yeah, I think the most disappointing thing I heard of that conversation you and I had was the fact that you told me the stereo sound was not that great or that loud.
It's not a huge improvement. I have noticed it is louder, because there were some times when I'd be walking Nash and I have the iPhone in my top pocket and I couldn't really hear the podcast over some traffic. And I noticed more times that I'm actually having to turn the volume down just to be polite to the people in my building when I walk through at 12:30 in the morning. And so it is a improvement. I think at first I was just expecting more of an improvement for the stereo speakers. It's not going to replace your Bluetooth speakers or any other kind of speakers when you want to get it really loud.
Okay, so are you going through headphone jack withdrawal yet?
Well, you know me. I was the one person when I heard about them getting rid of it. I'm like, so I know I'm in the minority there. And it was funny on the one of the fantasy football podcasts I listened to, which was for CBS. Their guys were all talking about, I'm never going to get a new iPhone. They got rid of my headphone jack. So it's not just an accessibility issue. I think people just don't like change. For me, it's not an issue at all.
Okay, well, for you, it's not an issue. For me, it's really not an issue either. And I guess we'll discuss a little bit after our guest is on, but about legacy. It's more about legacy hardware that people may have. There could be an issue. But you know what? That fades as well because, legacy hardware eventually is obsolete.
Yeah, and one thing, we're going to get into that later. One thing I did want to mention to anybody that has not necessarily gotten their iPhone yet, I was restoring from a backup, and I know we discussed this a few episodes ago. So I turned the iPhone on, and I'm just waiting, and I couldn't get VoiceOver to turn on. I thought it used to automatically. The first thing it asked you was, would you like to enable VoiceOver? I had to hook it up to my Mac and iTunes, and when I was going through the authorization process of, I guess pairing it to my cell phone account, eventually then VoiceOver finally kicked on about 4 or 5 screens into having to click next on iTunes, agree to this, agree to that, and everything. But it didn't kick on right out of the box, that's for certain.
Yeah, it doesn't kick on right out of the box, but I believe that triple click home is the way to turn it on for setup only. And once you get through setup, you before you get done with that, you have to go into settings and actually make sure that you turn VoiceOver on. So
yeah.
Because I had called a friend of mine who works at the Apple Store on 14th Street and asked her that about 2 weeks ago, because when I picked up my iPhone SE, they took it out of the box, and the girl was just opening it up, started checking it out for me, and she just went and automatically turned VoiceOver on for me during the setup process, so it made it easier.
You see, people. Look at you big time name dropper.
I didn't drop any names. I just
dropped
said Apple.
Locations.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
I had the new home button coming out of the box, so I was, not used to using it yet. So, but no, I got it up and running real quick. I didn't really have any issues, but I did want to at least bring that up on the podcast. I just, for some reason, at one time recall the first thing ever, and maybe that was like 5 iPhones ago and 6 operating systems where it said, would you like to enable VoiceOver? But
and it should be that simple. I mean, that's the one thing that when we talked about the Fire tablet that we were impressed about with Amazon, and they finally came up with accessibility out of the box with the 2-finger single tap.
If you recall, though, I had some fun with that, so maybe it's just me.
You think?
I try not to. We've established that over the years.
Yeah, it's good. That is good. Yeah, you're better off just being reactionary.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting though, because we do talk about the headphone jack, and when we do this show, Ed and I both have our notes. I actually do mine on the iPhone, and I've got the Lightning buds plugged in and everything. I no longer can charge my phone and do the show.
Well, you laugh, but you are one person I know that when your iPhone is home and at your desk, it usually is plugged in and charging.
It is. I'm an overcharger. It doesn't make me a bad person, but I have a tendency to overcharge this thing, probably killing the life cycle of the battery.
Probably.
Well, one of the things we got another update to was my 4th generation Apple TV, which has been pissing me off.
All right, Brian, drag the soapbox out. Let's go.
Hey, it's been a few episodes. I haven't been able to get on that soapbox, and we've touched on this before, and it's really a sad state because Apple could make it so easy if they would get their developers in line and start with maybe the Apple TV, where with the 3rd gen Apple TV, Apple controlled all of the apps, and now the developers control the apps. And I had an issue with ABC where I went to watch something, and it had a list like drama, comedy, popular, and I couldn't click on any of those buttons. I couldn't get to any of the content. And I'm curious if other users out there are noticing some issues in apps that used to be accessible on the Apple TV and no longer are. Let us know. You could tweet us in at iAccessVO, or shoot us in and use some more of those 4-letter words at iAccessVO@gmail.com.
Yeah, well, you know what? We've had this discussion before, and we're seeing it more and more. There's a lot of apps now on the Apple TV that are not accessible. And, I'm not going to blame the developers, and I'm not going to blame the individual app providers. I'm going to blame Apple, because they're the ones that set the standards. They have the criteria for developing the apps to make sure that it fits in with the interface. They should have an accessibility standard, period.
Agreed. A checklist. It's just a
Absolutely.
Simple checklist.
If you don't meet this criteria, your app's not ready for prime time.
And, talking about more from the iPhone, we've spoken with several developers who have told us, I didn't really have to do that much to make the app accessible.
Right. Now, I don't know what that is like on tvOS or whatever it's called today, but, it might be a little more difficult, but I think it's probably not.
Yeah, but then ESPN, you couldn't just hear channel. God forbid it says ESPN2, ESPN SEC. That'll be the day.
Well, you know what? Rather than count sheep to fall asleep, you just have to count channels.
Yes, that's true. They got like 36 of them on there. It'd be nice to know what they are. They just say channel. But I've been a little disappointed with the 4th Gen Apple TV and really the way things are progressing. Even Yahoo has a great track record of accessibility on the iPhone. Their app on the Apple TV, not very accessible.
Well, I have a good tip. You know how I have addressed this issue?
Don't get one.
I still have the 3rd Gen.
I do too, but that's the bedroom versus living room decision. There are a lot of apps that do work. Netflix. Although I've been hearing some people have been having some issues with Netflix, but I think people, when it comes to accessibility, are always going to have issues. And I have not. I think you've got to manually update the tvOS, and I just have not had a chance to do that yet. So we'll see what fun that's going to bring.
Okay, well, you should do that and see if that makes any kind of issues go away.
Yeah. Hopefully that could be the case. And unfortunately, though, and I can't go into too many details here. We've spoken about the Sierra beta that both John Panarese and I have been running on the Mac, and I'll tell you, I don't know what version they're in, but it seems to be going a little backwards when it comes to accessibility, which is very disappointing.
Yeah, I was surprised when you brought this up, because the last show that we did with you and John, you both were singing the praises of Sierra, and they finally got it right, and you were both so happy. And then I guess there was another update to the beta, and all of a sudden you were like, I don't know what's going on here, but this is awful.
Yeah. No, it's not awful. I think it might be dropping. Actually, it's probably dropping before this show comes out. I've heard rumors that it's coming Tuesday.
Right, so it'll be out 2 or 3 days before the show drops.
So, if you've updated to it, let us know what you think. But, in the earlier betas, it was so smooth. I'm getting a lot of VoiceOver crashes now, and that's like that sounds a lot worse than it is. It's just all of a sudden VoiceOver's working, it cycles itself off, and then all of a sudden you get VoiceOver on and just stuff like that, and a couple of focus issues and stuff I've noticed, but it's still probably much better than El Capitan. It's a little disappointing. I mean, the earlier betas worked so smoothly with VoiceOver.
Well, sometimes one tweak sometimes can really send things awry. So, and that's one of the reasons we talk about, when they come out with updates, just give them a little time, because sometimes they'll come out with a quick fix, and you just have no idea what it's going to do.
No, you have no clue. So, but a company that's not that Apple has a bad track record of accessibility. I didn't want to say that, but a company that was a little late to the accessibility game, but has a very good recent track record. Amazon announced the Amazon Dot 2nd generation, which I don't know if it's shipping or being released on October 20th. $49.99, Ed.
I know that's pretty amazing. That's an incredible price for something that if it's a standalone device and people buy it for the first time, I mean, it's a great entry level price. It'll give them that home personal assistant they can hook into their Wi-Fi. And I'm hoping that if they're bringing this price down, we might see the price of the Echo drop a bit.
Yeah, I have heard conflicting reports because somebody told me they have an Amazon Dot and it doesn't have a speaker.
Right.
And I went and read the specs for this, and it said speaker. So I don't know if that first gen of Amazon Dots did not have a speaker, or if I misread something. But I read it 2 or 3 times yesterday just to double check because I knew we were going to be talking about this. I could have sworn it says it has a speaker. It's not, going to be a great speaker because it's a tiny device, but you can hook it up to your Bluetooth speakers or whatever you got, or you know what does have a 3.5 millimeter jack there, Ed?
What's that, Brian?
The Amazon Dot. So if you get a new iPhone, you could take those old earbuds from Apple and pop them in and listen to your Amazon Dot.
Yeah, and it's probably small enough to carry around, too.
Small. I don't know the size of it, but I'm thinking we might, at that price range, we might have to make an addition to the bedroom, have an Apple TV in there, 3rd generation, and Apple Dot 2nd generation.
Wow, you mean you would actually drop $50 for entertainment in your bedroom?
Dude, anything that makes get out of bed? Come on, man.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Hey, speaking of October 7th, Ed, you know what October 7th is?
Well, who was speaking about October 7th? Did someone say it before you just did?
No, I just said it,
Okay.
I don't know. They're doing like a whole third patient. Can't even speak. It's Sunday night, and it's, I don't know what the issue is here, but I do have a guide dog that keeps running up to me to play, and he keeps licking my leg and then running away and then licking my leg. So I've been a little distracted here while we're doing this, but
okay.
So no, you know what October 7th means to you and me?
I know what it means to 3 lucky listeners.
Oh, you want to talk about the lucky listeners first? Okay, so why don't we tell the lucky listeners what October 7th means to them? Okay,
so right now we're running our first contest on iAccessVO.
Are you asking me if I know that or our listeners?
No, I just stated you know that.
Oh.
So, okay, yes. All right, so in the contest, what we've been doing is anybody who goes to our iAccessVO Facebook page and clicks the like button automatically gets entered in to win one of 3 Blind Square GPS 4.0 apps that we were lucky enough for the developer to give us promo codes for to give to our listeners. So they can either like the Facebook page, they can share the Facebook post talking about that episode or this upcoming episode, or they can retweet one of your tweets on our Twitter account at iAccessVO.
That's true. Now, have you gotten to play around with Blind Square GPS 4.0 and that voice recognition at all yet?
I actually did. I was in there. I did not activate the voice recognition, but I was looking at actually it's 4.0.1, I think, because they came out to an update to the new version already. And, it's running smoothly. I actually went in there because I changed navigation to switch over to Google Maps for looking for an address for me, and I really liked how it worked.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out, yeah. I have not gotten a chance to play around with voice recognition yet, but so I'm looking forward to it probably this week. I'm sure I'll get lost somewhere and have to break.
But I'll tell you what I have done is through that interview, we discussed using the headphones to activate the locations and select them, and that's been working really well for me.
Yeah, no, that's a great little feature there that only us more advanced super cool users knew about before the interview.
There you go. And that and lowering my proximity to 80 feet, that's been a big plus as well.
What about iOS 10? I know you normally wait about 6 months to install that thing, but you kind of took a book out of my playbook.
I did. I actually downloaded it on Thursday night and was very impressed with how smooth the whole process went. And I'm really liking the new iOS 10. It's got some great features. A few things are different, and you always have to get used to a little bit of change or whatever. But it's a nice, clean interface, and it's probably what I would say is the best iOS drop I've seen since I've owned an iPhone.
Yeah, and I know you and I both saw that email. 100 changes to the iPhone. There wasn't too much exciting in there, though, to me. A lot of it was had to do with different languages, which I guess if you speak a different language other than English, I know you've pointed out to me that there are many, many languages that are not English. So it's good that the iPhone's even supporting more of them and a lot of new features coming to them. By the way, did you know people in Canada can't get the news app?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's not standard on their phone, or
no? It's something I don't know. The Canadian news agencies, I guess, don't support it. Who the heck knows? But yeah, I believe it was Canada that doesn't get the news. But maybe there's no news in Canada.
There goes our five Canadian listeners.
Got one listener in Montreal because he's in the fantasy football league.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, how's that going, by the way? I'll ask you a quick.
Talk about it. I had a rough day today, so I was 1-0 headed into today. I'm no longer undefeated.
Ah, okay. So what do you like best about iOS on the iPhone?
One of the things, as somebody that's in the whole Mac environment, that I really like. I like access to my desktop. I was playing around with that. That is really cool, because I'm running the Sierra beta, so some of you might have to wait until this comes out. Just, inside the iCloud drive, there's now a folder that says desktop, and I opened it up, and sure enough, there's everything that was on my computer desktop, which is pretty cool. I might have to start keeping a messy desktop like some of those people out there that you and I train.
Oh, there you go. So, all right. So what about, I got to tell you, the one thing that I did activate on the iPhone through iOS 10 was the magnifier setting. And I turned it on, and it seemed to work well.
How's that stack up against your supervision there, Superman?
No, I think supervision is still better for what I was trying to do with it, because it just seems to have a greater range of zoom, and I like the invert color version of that a little bit better. But the thing I don't like about it is that it ties into activation using triple click home, and I am one that I just like to have VoiceOver on triple click because I want to quickly turn it on and turn it off, and now I have to deal with if I leave that on, I got to deal with a second step of selecting whether I want VoiceOver or magnifier.
Yeah, so you don't think you'll get much use out of the magnifier?
Not what I've seen so far. I'm gonna deactivate it, and I'll check it after a couple of updates and see if it changes.
Well, you don't really need it with that supervision you got going on over there.
That's right. So,
dun.
Yep. But I tell you, the other thing that I'm not too thrilled about is that on my email, when I go into the inbox, I used to be able to just flick through, hear who it was from, and get a quick read of the first one or two sentences of the email. I can't get that anymore unless I do a 3-finger single tap on the phone. So some extra movement going on there. Yeah,
I was very disappointed with that. It's like, would you rather just automatically have it read to you when you flick to it, or do a 3-finger single tap to have it read to you?
Yeah, if I flick it, I don't want to hear that one. I would just flick quickly again and go to the next one. Now I have to stop, 3-finger tap, listen.
It's almost like they did it in reverse. You think like years ago you would have had to do a 3-finger tap to have it read to you. Mm-hmm. Now you just flick to it and you have it read to you. It seems like they're going the wrong way with that,
Yep, absolutely.
One of the things, though, getting back to things that I love, and because I'm running Sierra, Universal Clipboard. Wow, that's cool. I tested it out. It works perfectly. I copied something on the computer to the rotor edit paste, and sure enough, it was exactly what I had copied on my computer. That it's like, wow, and now it's on my iPhone. So that's something for people that are in the Mac universe that's going to be incredibly handy. So gone are those days of emailing things to yourself.
Yeah, well, actually, you know what? I would like to use that because I could actually, a lot of times when I market the show on Facebook, I'll type up the little promo for the episode, and I'll copy it to clipboard, and I leave it in my clipboard, and I'll turn around and just copy and paste it when I'm posting it to different groups or to people or so. And it's nice now. I could actually leave and do it on my iPhone and not have to email it to myself and recopy and repaste it on. So that's a nice feature.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to use a Mac, obviously, to do that. And, for those of us using Macs, boy, did we go from 3 or 4 or 5 voices to 20 voice choices with VoiceOver?
No, those are all the same voices that are on the Mac, but now they're available on the iOS devices.
Yeah, but people, I'm saying on the iPhone, you used to have only 5 to 7 choices. Now there's just a boatload of choices. They're all the voices that people on the Mac are accustomed to. But it's nice. I had been saying for you, well, why don't we have that option on the iPhone?
Yep, and it's funny because I actually saw them all just a little while ago because I updated my iPad to iOS 10 overnight as well, and I think I've told you that I keep VoiceOver set to the Samantha voice. I'm just used to it. I like it. It's fine, but when you do the iOS 10 upgrade, it automatically updates it to the Samantha enhanced voice, which I'm not a fan of. So I always back it off to the Samantha original.
That's funny because I do like the Samantha enhanced voice, and I like Alex. Tom is very nice sounding, and I like some of the Australian voices, Siri, and you and I think both use the Singapore voice for Siri, though, right?
The Singapore female English voice, yes. I mean, that's a great voice. I love it. It just has a nice chime to it when I ask Siri to give me some assistance.
Wow. Now, one of the things, because you and I have spoken about, sometimes they just need to leave well enough alone. This whole raise to wake, and I'll tell you, when I first got the iPhone and I used my thumbprint, and then it's like, wait a minute, now I have to tap a home button to open my phone? What the heck is that all about? Because it was so convenient before.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that we both pretty much came up with that discovery at the same time. You had contacted me, and I was just about to text you about, hey, you can go in there and change the settings so you can just do fingerprint touch for it now so you don't have to press that home button.
Was that under accessibility? Do you remember where that was for people that might be like, why do I have to touch my finger and then touch the home button to open the phone?
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's under accessibility. I think it's just under settings, and you go to the home button setting. Yeah,
that's just I just don't get that. It's why do I want an extra step to unlock my phone? It's whoever thought that up at Apple should be fired.
Well, I think that he must have been sitting next to the guy to put the extra step in there to read our emails,
as well as the guy that came up with the first generation of Apple Maps.
You know what? It must be a whole department over there.
It is.
They must call them extra steps.
Well, I'm sorry. What was that?
They call them the extra steppers.
The extra steppers, yeah. It's the people that thought up two-step authentication, which I know is important, because of security. And it's kind of like when you're like me and you have multiple devices and you authorize a new iPhone. Well, how come I get a pop-up that I have to click OK on every other Apple device I own?
Well, otherwise we might be having the Russians releasing your emails rather than calling pals.
That's true, but my emails would be a lot about fantasy football. And
they'd be like, what is this football?
What is this football you talk of? Maybe our caller Hansel would. I was surprised he didn't want to get in on the fantasy football league on that island off the coast of Russia.
I think he has difficulty accessing the internet on a regular basis to keep his team in order.
Didn't he say he was stealing his neighbor's Wi-Fi to call into the show?
Yeah, something like that. But he didn't tell you his neighbor's probably like 1,000 miles away.
That's true. Well, Hansel, if you're listening, give us a call. It's been a while since we've got a call in. Do you have that number handy?
Yes, the number is 732-660-8641. So if you have any feedback, if you have a question, you have a tip, you want to share, try and keep it down to 60 seconds or less, and we'd like to put you on air.
Yeah, and using the phone, it's kind of like 21st century form of communication, but Not really, because we have a 21st Century Communications Act who has a deadline looming, Ed.
Yes, December 31st. So the 21st Century Communications Accessibility Act of 2010 is supposed to go into effect December 31st of 2016, and nobody is doing anything.
Nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, I know. You know, the funny thing is that you would come across someone that had a Samsung television, and they'd given you the model, and they said that it was accessible at this point. And, you know, and that's great. And I had someone tell me the same thing about the Sony television. So I actually did a little research on the web for Sony, and they have an accessibility and usability web page, and they talk about their dedication to the 21st Century Communications Accessibility Act of 2010, and how they are promoting to make sure that all their devices are now accessible and usable. I think the issue is you can build something that meets that standard, but if the content providers are not cooperating, there's no information to access.
Yeah, and outside of Comcast, none of the cable providers are updating their boxes, and you know, they've got such a strong lobby that nothing's going to happen to them. Nothing's going to happen to them.
Yeah, no, I did have a conversation with somebody from American Council for the Blind recently, and I was told that they, for some reason, they're not going to make a move, or they can't make a move or do anything until, like, I think December 15th or 16th. That if they don't see something, then all of a sudden they're going to start talking about it. But I'm like, you know, why do we have to wait to the last minute?
Yeah, it's really 2 weeks. You're telling me with 2 weeks to go in the year, all the cable companies are finally. I mean, talk about an industry that's just very slow to change. I mean,
well, whose fault is it though? I mean, you know, this is the people who write the legislation, because there's no bite in the bark. I mean, there's no teeth to this thing. You know, if you don't make it, there's no repercussions, and there's no fines or to be levied or anything. All you have to do is show that you've made some kind of an effort. I mean, what is that?
Yeah, you know, and kudos to Samsung, because I forget the model number. For some reason, I'm thinking it was like the 5500 series. You do want to look that up. But I know at Best Buy, they're selling that 32-inch model for about $240 or $225, and that's... If I need it, I mean, I'm fortunate because I have a TiVo, and by using the TiVo app, I'm able to get, and the app works great with VoiceOver, so I'm able to have all the descriptions and everything read to me. But you know, and all the settings and everything sounded very accessible. That's one thing I can access is the settings. Now I did hear on the Samsung model, and we'd love if you got that model to let us know that there is a direct button for Describe TV within the settings there. And, you know, on most TV models like the one I currently have, you have to set everything to I've never been able to get Describe Video for any cable broadcast shows.
Well, that goes back to what I said, you know, a few minutes ago, that if the content providers are not in the game and they're not cooperating, there's nothing to get.
No, and well, at least we do have, you know, because Canada, Australia, and the England, which, as you pointed out to me, are all separate countries. They've had TVs that talk to them for years. We're just getting, and at least we have two models to choose from, Samsung and Sony. We're just getting them for the first time in this country in 2016. Right,
and Japan as well. Japan has made some great strides here as well, and that's what I read on the Sony website, is that you know, they have a great beta system where they're working with the disabled community, not just in development, but even after the products come out, they continue to work to make improvements in these areas.
Yeah, but you know what's great is we've got the perfect guest to discuss the 21st Century Communications Act with, because I don't know if she's been involved with that, but she might know what's going on about it because she's a lawyer.
Okay.
And I'm very excited to talk to her. She's a long history of accessibility and supporting the blind community. She's a guest speaker, I think, every year at CSUN. And I'm really excited and looking forward to speaking to Lainey Feingold.
Okay, well, let's bring her on because I'm excited to meet her as well.
Let's go. Now we'd like to welcome in a very special guest, somebody who's out there fighting for the rights of people, Lainey Feingold. How you doing today, Lainey?
I'm good, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Lainey. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Ed. Glad to be here.
Now, a lot of people in the blindness community are probably familiar with who you are, but for those who aren't, why don't you tell our listeners what a disability rights advocate does?
Well, the good thing is there's a lot of different tools, and advocates have a lot of tools at their disposal to do a lot of different things, and we can get into that a little later. What I do, I'm a disability rights lawyer. I live in Berkeley, California. I have my own law practice. I work out of my house, and next week it will be 20 years. It's hard to believe. I represent blind individuals as well as organizations. I've done a lot of work with the ACB and various state affiliates, American Foundation, and my practice has become one that focuses on digital accessibility. I got started in this back in the 90s working on talking ATMs, and basically I use a process called structured negotiation, which I just wrote a book about, and it's a way to work with companies, government agencies, nonprofits, and have a relationship between the company and the blind community. Accessibility can be achieved in a collaborative rather than a conflictual way.
Oh, awesome.
Well, speaking of your book, Structured Negotiation, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I will just say it took a long time to write a book, and I'm really excited about it. It's called Structured Negotiation, A Winning Alternative to Lawsuits. It was published by the American Bar Association last month. It's available in print as well as accessible ebook. They have two forms of the ebook. They have a EPUB, and then they have something called Mobi. I'm not quite sure about that, but there's two different electronic forms, and the book is available on Bookshare. So I'm hoping, anyone who wants to read it can. And it's about this process that I've been using since the mid-90s with other lawyers and the blind community. I guess I'll just give you one little story. It's full of stories of the cases, and the cases started with Steve Mendelson, who's a blind lawyer. I don't know if you guys know him. Back in the 90s, he was like, well, the ADA just passed, and there's not a single ATM in the United States I can use. So he called his friend, who was a lawyer, and that friend called me, and we thought, well, there's a new ADA. We really should have accessible ATMs. But there were none, not only in the United States, but at that time there were none in the world, as far as we know, and I'm pretty sure that's the case. So rather than file a lawsuit, we wrote a letter to Bank of America and to Wells Fargo and to Citibank. We said, there's this law, the Americans with Disabilities Act. You have customers who are blind. They can't use your ATMs. We think it's a legal violation, but rather than file a lawsuit, why don't we sit down and talk about it? And much to our surprise, they all said yes. And that led to the first talking ATM agreements in the United States. And towards the end of that, in the late 1990s, all of a sudden, everyone was talking about online banking. Hardly anyone was using it, but the early adopters in the blind community knew that if online banking wasn't accessible, all the work we had done with ATMs would, not be enough. So we asked Bank of America, hey, can we work on this new thing? It was new to me, web accessibility. And some of our blind clients, Roger Peterson, Jerry Coons, they had these hookups where they had telemachines that talked to the bank computers and sent back stuff in Braille. Anyways, Bank of America said yes, and they signed the first agreement in the country on web accessibility. And that led us to doing more of it, and that's what the book is about, those stories and how it is to convince a big organization that it is better to work together rather than to fight.
Now, that's quite fascinating and very exciting, because I bet some of those stories are comical. Actually, are any of them a little comical?
Comical? Well, I am kind of a serious person, so I don't really know if any of the things are comical. Some things are better to laugh at, actually, than pull your hair out. A lot of the cases begin when blind people call customer service and are told, "Can't somebody read that to you?" I'm sure you guys have had that experience.
Yes. Never heard that one before.
So in the book, I tell one of those stories. We worked in the mid-2000s on making sure free credit reports were available to blind people, both online and in formats like Braille and large print. And that case, again, in structured negotiation, we ended up with a great relationship with the credit reporting companies. And they were I would say they were excited to get to know blind members of the public that they would not really have had a chance to meet without the process. But that's the end of the story. The beginning of the story was a woman, and I tell this in the book, Lori Gray, who's an independent blind woman in Berkeley, and she works for a recreational nonprofit. And, she called to get her free credit report. And when she told them she was blind, they were like, "Well, can't your mother read it to you?" And she's like, "Well, my mother's dead," And by the end of the case, the companies, of course, are mortified that that's what happened. And, that's one of the reasons in all the settlements we do, we always work in training, because some of this is just the front end, people not knowing, not having the experience. So, you could scream about that kind of stuff. You could. The most important thing is get down to business and get it changed.
I think I know with the structured negotiation, it has to be a quicker timeline than getting involved in a whole drawn-out, litigation and dealing with court dates and everything else like that. So, from a perspective of accomplishing the goal of getting something, settled quickly, it has to be a much shorter process.
It often is. It isn't always, because when you're negotiating with people, in order to get the kind of really powerful results we've gotten, it takes time, especially with a big organization, for them to be comfortable and to really understand, what accessibility is. And you don't have a judge telling them and making rulings. Most of the time it's shorter, and there's no appeals, and you're not waiting around for a judge to do something. You're not taking depositions. You're really having conversation. But, a lot of times it takes patience to work with big organizations. And in the book, I write about that there's certain qualities. People from television expect their lawyers to be, fighting and aggressive and loud and a certain way. And that's not always the best strategy if you're really focused on getting stuff done.
Do they have a different breed of lawyers in California? Because Brian and I are from New York, and every lawyer I know in New York falls into the category you just described.
Well, I'll tell you something. The last chapter is all about, it's called the Structured Negotiation Mindset. And it's about certain qualities that really make the process effective. And patience, one of them. And when I talk about patience, I talk about the blind surfer, Derek Rabello. Do you guys know him?
I've heard the name before.
Yeah, he's like my role model for patience, because I do a lot of presentations to tech audiences, and I notice that their slides, they have good slides. So I wanted a good image for patience. And someone wrote to me, said, "What about a surfer waiting for a wave?" And I always like my images to be tied to the disability movement somehow. So I just randomly Googled blind surfer, and sure enough, there's this guy who's a big wave surfer. There's a movie about him. And I write about that in the book, about, he can have patience. Why can't we? So, yeah. No, New York lawyers can do this too. It's not just California.
Was
just trying to be
Point Break
funny
about him? Was the movie Point Break about him? Was he also a bank robber?
No, that must be a different blind surfer.
That's the surfer movie I've seen. They're blind. They're not blind. They're bank robbers who are surfers. No, I knew that wasn't about Derek. But now you've mentioned a few companies already. What are some other companies or organizations that you've negotiated with to better blind people's lives?
Well, I'll give you some of the ones that people seem most excited about, and probably top on that list is Major League Baseball. And Major League Baseball negotiations, like all of our cases, started with blind advocates. In this case, blind Red Sox fans in Boston, Brian Charlson and Rick Morin and Bob Hache. and the Bay State Council of the Blind, and there's a lot of baseball that happens online.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys, some of your audience members will know these baseball fans. They're very rabid baseball fans. And so we approached Major League Baseball in structured negotiation, and they turned out to be a great negotiating partner. They not only fixed their main website, MLB.com, but they got all the teams to fix their websites. When we first started with them, we wrote the letter to them, which is how negotiations start, about a week before the App Store opened. So having baseball on the phone, which is very common now, wasn't an issue. But because structured negotiation is a flexible process, once the mobile app became something people were using, we went to Major League Baseball and said, we also have to work on this app. So they did that, and they've done a lot of great work.
I'm a big baseball fan. They've done a tremendous job as far as all of the major sports leagues. MLB's app is the most accessible. You can get and listen to their games on the Apple TV. The app, it's very good to use as far as checking box scores. Everything is very accessible. Even on their website, I think the very first thing, at least when you use a screen reader, that you come across is, I think, a message that says, "We take accessibility seriously," which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, they have, we always say we want, in the best cases, we have accessibility baked into the company or part of the company's DNA. And even in successful negotiations, that doesn't always happen. We can get the changes made, but accessibility, I was just saying to someone, when you build a door that's 36 inches wide or 32 inches wide, it's going to stay that way unless, you put a box in front of it. But as you guys know, accessibility can easily break.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
Yeah, I stopped using the word upgrade because people are always saying, oh, we upgraded our site, but accessibility is broken. So I think we need to start calling it a downgrade. But Major League Baseball really, it's part of who they are now. And I would say the same with the free credit reports and Bank of America, too. They've just been a great negotiating partner. We did a good agreement with the city of San Francisco that shows that structured negotiation is a good process for government agencies, although not surprisingly, things can take a long time when you're working with the government. We did a case with them on accessible pedestrian signals. And when we started, they had one accessible pedestrian signal in the entire city. And the work of the Lighthouse, we represented the Lighthouse for the Blind, San Francisco Lighthouse, as well as California Council of the Blind and the local CIL, the Independent Living Resource Center. And that was another real collaborative. They really baked in their accessible pedestrian signal program.
Oh, that's good
you
stuff.
Mean blind people cross more than one street?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't even a street. It was just they had one because it was a federal agency meeting and they put it in as like a demonstration. And, it was one of those things, once they got to meet because of advocacy groups had tried to get it fixed without lawyers, always my first recommendation, before you call a lawyer, try to find someone who can get the issue inside. But unfortunately, sometimes lawyers are needed to open up doors.
What do you think about the current state of web accessibility?
Well, I'm frustrated with this upgrade downgrade thing because things will be good and then they will get broken, and certain things that are hip and cool, like color contrast is a very important factor to a lot of people, and what's hip and cool now is like light gray on white. It's like edgy, but it's hard to see, so that's frustrating. I'm an optimist. I actually write about optimism in the book, another important quality for negotiating, because you got to believe in it or else it's too easy to throw in the towel. Yeah. So there's more awareness on web accessibility. There's more people working on it. I'm a big believer on having accessibility in the footer of your website so people know what you're working on. Even if it's not perfect, have a phone number and an email in there. make sure who is ever answering it knows what they're talking about. So, it's a glass half full, half empty thing. I want to stay positive. And
I think it's a work in progress because, it's constantly creating awareness and educating in an environment where people just, I'm not going to say they're ignorant. They're just uninformed.
Yeah. And, Ed and I, we've mentioned on this show before, one of the things that we loathe in the blindness community is when an app or a website comes out and says completely brand new app redesign, because we're like, oh God, what have they broken with accessibility now?
Exactly.
Yeah, Brian actually lost 50 pounds because his Grubhub app is no longer accessible.
Yeah. Now, we tell our listeners, when an app isn't accessible or a website, that they could we urge them to contact the developer. I'm notorious for blasting companies on Twitter. I start with some polite things, and then when it gets into 5 years of them not responding, I'm talking about you, ESPN. Some 4-letter words might come out on Twitter. But besides contacting an app or a developer or a company, what other options might a blind person have should the company be non-responsive?
Well, that's where you asked at the beginning, what do you do as a legal advocate? That's where the strategy question comes in. And I try to keep up with developments in this field. And I do a blog post called Digital Accessibility Legal Update. So my website is my initials lflegal.com. And there's a high-level menu item for legal updates. And I try to keep track, not just my cases, everybody's cases. And those updates are illustrated with a toolbox. And I use that because I like to say there's a lot of different tools that people can use when they have an accessibility claim. So, a broken website is a civil rights issue. A company is deciding to offer information or services to the public, and they're excluding a part of the public. So that's what makes it a legal issue. The exclusion, the lack of communication. So the U.S. Department of Justice takes complaints on web accessibility. If it has to do with higher education or K-12, the U.S. Department of Education takes complaints. If it's an airline issue, they have their own law and they have their own requirements for web accessibility. The Department of Transportation takes complaints. So there is that whole government agency enforcement piece. The Department of Justice also takes complaints on government and, also higher ed as well as Department of Ed. But, they investigate city governments, local governments. There's private lawyers. We have a Disability Rights Bar Association that is a group of lawyers that only do disability rights work, and some of us focus.
Is that a state group or is that a national group?
That's a national group. I could send you the link after. Maybe you could put it in here.
Yeah, sure.
It's Disability Rights Bar Association. We call it DRBA, but DRBA is something else too. So if you just look it up, Disability Rights Bar Association, there's around 300 lawyers around the country only representing disabled people. Not all of us do digital accessibility, but some of us do. Organizations, American Council of the Blind, National Federation of the Blind, National Association of the Deaf is getting involved in digital accessibility because of the captioning issue. So people can go to their organizations and people can call, me if they think it's an issue for structured negotiation, or they can call private lawyers because there have been successful lawsuits. So I think you're right. The first step, probably the first 5 steps are trying to get it fixed without a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as developers themselves, like who work for these companies or so, are there services available to them or places where they can submit their website to for testing to see if it's accessible before they launch, or is that something that hasn't really developed yet?
Well, that is a good question. I have a resources link on my website, and I include in there the consulting firms that provide great services on accessibility. I also include a listing of nonprofits that do user testing, which tend to be a little less expensive than going with a major accessibility firm, although the accessibility firms also do usability testing. So there's really no excuse for not finding disabled people. And as you guys know, web accessibility isn't just about blindness, but you can call, I have these nonprofits, a local lighthouse, a lot of universities have disability studies programs. So there's a lot of ways to get disabled users into the lab where you don't even have to get them somewhere. Just, send them a code to get on the back end to check it out before you launch. I also really recommend the accessibility meetups that are active in a lot of cities. We have one here that Jennison Asuncion, I don't know if he's been on your show.
No.
He's great. He's a real connector. He works for LinkedIn, and he does a digital accessibility meetup in San Francisco. I know Accessibility Chicago and Boston Accessibility have them, and it's a good way for developers to, meet other people who are in the field, get exposure to the issues, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they're very popular here in New York City as well. We have a few.
One thing I've noticed that's become more mainstream these days, and I'd like to hear what you think. It seems to me 10 years ago, nobody knew the term accessibility, and nowadays it seems like most people in the technology field know what accessibility means.
Yeah, I think that's true. And we have a problem right now with not enough skilled workers. And some of the big companies have gotten together to put this, it's not an organization, but it's called Teach Access. I don't know if you guys have had them on, but they're trying to get accessibility into computer science programs, into the boot camps, because companies want skilled developers who know accessibility, and people can come out of training and not know the first thing. So that's an important piece.
And that's part of what Brian and I do. We teach assistive technology for people for job saves, or people who are transitioning to college, or people who are in a position where they may be experiencing a progressive eye condition or eye disease that's losing their vision, and we work with them to make sure that they can either get the job that they want or maintain the job that they have.
Ed, are you letting our listeners know that this podcast doesn't pay us millions of dollars to live in New York City?
I thought your mom was paying us to live here.
You got that check for the friendship thing, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, just check. Now, Lainey,
Yeah.
We actually have a colleague of ours who was at CSUN this year and was unable to get into your speech. So for him and the many others who might not have been at CSUN, when you do speak at CSUN, what's the general message you're looking to get across?
Well, first of all, this year I'm going to put in to do the session twice, because it's heartbreaking when people want to come and they don't, and they're not able to. So 2 things on that. One, in the legal updates that I put on my website contain a lot of the information that I give out at the sessions. I started doing the legal updates because I realized that the slides, first of all, they're not that accessible. Even, when you present, you can describe them, but when you're just putting them up on a website, they don't really do that much. So that's why a couple of years ago I started doing the legal updates with the links to everybody's cases and press releases. Mostly, it's kind of a pep talk to say the law's on your side. I mean, one of the themes I have is that the law, I have a slide on this, that the law isn't really just something that should be in a lawyer's office. It really needs to be in everybody's back pocket. I have this cute little pocket with some pencils sticking out of it, because everybody needs to know that access to digital content is a civil right. So I try to go through all the different ways the law is being used, education cases, transportation. Just yesterday, there were cases filed in Austin against 2 ride-sharing companies for not having accessible mobile apps. So Austin had to kick out Uber and Lyft because – no, that's not right. Austin passed a law saying that Uber and Lyft had to fingerprint their drivers, something like that, and Uber and Lyft refused to, so they just pulled out of Austin. And new ride-sharing – I just put this on Twitter. I can send it to you after. New ride-sharing companies came in, and their apps are not accessible. And the National Federation for the Blind and the Disability Rights Texas and Tim Elder, who's a blind lawyer out here in California, said to these companies, you need to be accessible, and they're not. So 2 lawsuits were filed in federal court yesterday. on the digital access of those mobile apps for ride sharing in Texas. So I just go through, I try to get up to date. I call all the lawyers around the country I know who are handling the cases, and I say, what's happening? And the session's only 40 minutes, so I talk fast and just give people a flavor, because too often people think of the law as a hammer, and it's a negative thing. People don't like it. It's aggressive. It's bad. But in fact, the law is moving accessibility forward along with people like you and advocates and developers, but the law has a role. So I kind of feel it's my role to let people understand that.
Wow. Brian, I think I just learned something. I think I just learned that ESPN is violating your civil rights by not providing you with accessible access to digital media.
I'd love to negotiate with them. Get in the room. ESPN has been the bane of my existence, Lainey, for years. They just don't care, And I've fortunately, there are enough other companies like Yahoo, which has done a fantastic job with making their app fully accessible, and we even have a iAccessVO all-blind Yahoo Fantasy Football League this year. So, it was great that they've been able to make that accessible.
Yeah, one thing just real quick on that, which we should say, is that in all these companies that make things accessible, it's because there are people in them who are doing a good job. And Yahoo has a great accessibility team. And if you look at these companies who are doing the right thing, it's because individual people in there are being champions of these issues.
And we've seen that. We've seen that in the past year. Even with Facebook has done some tremendous work in the past year or so, and Amazon has a new accessibility team together, and what they've done with the Fire tablet is really come a long way. So they're out there and they're in the public eye now, and there's a lot of publicity about it. So I think it's working.
Yeah, and companies like Amazon and Facebook, they fought accessibility changes for a very long time. So the fact that these companies are now making changes, Amazon, they've done a really tremendous job, as Ed mentioned, with the tablet, and they're going back into their Fire Stick devices and building accessibility back into those. But the one thing where they seem to have dropped the ball is in described video, which a lot of our listeners ask us about. What would your advice be to the blind community as far as trying to get Amazon to begin to provide those described video tracks for their content?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we've noticed in our work is that there's competition among the companies. And like structured negotiation, for example, it doesn't create legal precedent. There's no judge saying you have to do this, whatever. But there's a very real thing called industry precedent. And now that Netflix, because of blind community advocacy and ACB settlement, with Netflix on description, I think that's a good leverage point to go to the other companies and say, look, here's what Netflix is doing, and here's how to do it right. Netflix, I don't think they have everything yet, but they have a lot of content that's now described, and you can find it on the website. So
they've come in an unbelievably tremendous way. When I first heard that Netflix was getting described video, I'm like, oh, it's going to be like one or two titles, and I believe all their original content is described, and they've had more and more content. Ed and I have also noticed that iTunes now has over 100 titles with described video content that just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, some of it, like you said earlier, is awareness. And they, Amazon or some of these companies might need a legal push in one of these strategies, or with enough, at bottom, they're customer service oriented companies. They need customer service. They don't like negative tweets. They don't like negative press releases. In our structured negotiations, I have a chapter in the book on media about how we don't put out a negative release about a company to say what they're doing wrong at the beginning of the process. We wait until there's something positive, like the ACB's press release with Major League Baseball, for example, or we did an agreement with Weight Watchers. And when I was writing the book, I tried to talk to a lot of the lawyers for the companies, and I was kind of surprised that they said, not doing a bad press release is almost as important as not filing a lawsuit. because nobody likes a bad press release, and a lawsuit just might end up in the legal department of a big company, whereas a press release could go to the CEO or the chairman of the board.
Right, and it draws a line in the sand that sometimes just makes it a lot harder to negotiate.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a strategy with some of these companies.
I guess I did negotiate because I had an incident with the NYPD where they denied me entrance with my service dog into an establishment here in New York City, and the NYPD ended up backing the establishment. And I sat down. I ended up filing a complaint here with a city organization, and they set up mediation and negotiation. And the officer and I sat down. It was a very pleasant conversation. There was no yelling. There was no heated debate. He actually apologized to me, found out after the fact that he was indeed wrong about the service dog law. And the only problem is now it's just a letter writing campaign, to affect change, hopefully, and to get the NYPD to get some training about what proper service dog law is, because that's, where the real issue lies.
Yeah, training is so key.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, that's where it comes down to. Now, what can the blindness community do as a whole to possibly ensure a more accessible tomorrow? I mean, there are any other things besides tweeting developers or sending messages that you might suggest?
Well, I think that, we've done a lot of, I'll use accessible prescription, for example. So we use structured negotiation with most of the major pharmacies in the United States to provide talking labels. And we need people to ask for those labels. Because one thing that happens is these companies, blindness is a low incidence disability. And out of sight, out of mind, to use an expression. And there's a lot of turnover, especially in these companies like, we'll do a deal with Walgreens. They have 7,000 stores. If no one's ever asking for the accessible features, they're going to have a new person in there who's never going to have been trained. So it's really important. The advocacy organizations, like I said, AFB, ACB, NFB, they're really fighting for people's rights. And when they achieve something, people should exercise those rights. That's one advice that I would have.
Yeah, it's very key to speak up, let your voice be heard, and even if you step on a few feet. But, Lainey, this was an absolute treat. Please let our listeners know, one, where they could find your book. Two, I know you are on Twitter offering advice, and go ahead and give your website again if you would.
Okay, well, I don't offer advice on Twitter. I'm a lawyer, so none of this stuff is legal advice. None of this stuff is legal advice. I probably should have said that at the beginning, but I do, like to keep people posted because I think the more you know about your rights, the more you can exercise them.
Hold on, wait, before you give the links, so you don't want to do our podcast and have me get you disbarred.
Right. Yeah, that'd be good, especially since the ABA published my book. I can't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the best place to learn about my book is at lflegal.com/book. And there I have the link to the Bookshare site. There's a 10% discount code for people wanting to buy the book. So that's my website, lflegal.com/book. And when you're there, you can look at other things on the site, like the legal updates. I do have an email list. I don't send out things that often, but sometimes I do, mostly about digital accessibility updates or my book. And people can email me at LF, my initials, LF, at lflegal.com. And it's helpful if you just tell me what state you're in, if you want to be on the email list. Okay. And on Twitter, same thing, at LFlegal. Sort of become my brand, LF Legal.
Good. Any plans to do an audio version of your book?
I would like to do that. I don't know who to talk to about that. It's the first time I've ever been an author, probably the last, and I'm feeling my way. And I would like to have, if you guys know anything about that, I'd love it.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, lady, you have a great voice. I would love to listen to you reading your book.
Oh, that's so nice. Let's think. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but let's figure that out. I appreciate you guys for having me on. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Are you going to be at CSUN again this year, Lainey?
I will be.
Good. Well, I'm hoping to make it this year, so hopefully if I'm out there, we'll have to say hello.
Yes, and I'd also like to get to New York with my book. You know, I'm doing a talk at Harvard, has a program on negotiation, and they're going to do an event with me and Paul Paravano, who's a blind guy who works at MIT, who has worked on our cases. So we're going to do an event there in November, and I'd love to, come out to New York because I know there's a lot of great advocates out there. So
there's a great advocacy, and we have the Andrew High School Braille and Talking Book Library right in in the Chelsea area of Manhattan, which is very popular. It'd be a great place for you to promote your book.
Yeah, so if you think of anyone who wants to sponsor me to get out to New York, let me know.
Okay, we'll do that.
We'll do.
All right, great to talk to you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lainey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Lainey.
Bye.
You're listening to Brian and Ed on iAccessVO.
Now that was just an absolute wealth of information, and maybe if we ever need a lawyer, I guess we know who we're going to call.
Well, you should keep that number handy because you usually need an attorney more than I do.
I get angry at things, and
hey, Lainey, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Yeah. So now, because you're the one of us that could read, we got an email.
Yes, we did. We get lots of emails, but this was interesting because this was inspired from our last show where we discussed the earbuds. So one of our listeners, Tom Colburn, wrote in, and I guess he misunderstood what we were saying in thinking that when you got the new iPhone 7, you were not going to get any earbuds, and you were expected to go out and spend $149 to buy the new wireless earbuds. And we know that's simply not the case because you told me that you received a set of earbuds that are very similar, if not identical, to the ones we used to get with the 3.55 millimeter jack, but this one has a lightning connector on it.
Yeah, they're exactly the same thing. I've never been a fan of these. I don't think they're the greatest quality, but Siri already misunderstood me when I was trying to put "Do Not Disturb" on the for the show. It said, "I don't understand."
Oh, wait. Siri didn't misunderstand you because you were using a new set of earbuds. Siri always misunderstands you.
Brian, I do have problems understanding you sometimes.
Siri and I have issues, we can't go into them on the show because they're deep-seated issues. But
you know what? We had an attorney on this time. Maybe we should have a therapist on one of our upcoming shows, and you and Siri can hit the couch together.
Yeah, work out our differences.
Something like that, some mediation or something along those lines.
It's funny because I was joking around with a buddy the other day, and my other product, Alexa, was really misbehaving, so I was really yelling at her to shut up, and all of a sudden there were police knocking at my door saying they needed to talk to Alexa and make sure she was okay.
That's what happens when you live in apartments in New York City.
Yeah.
Everybody hears you through the walls and knows your business.
Yeah, exactly. And the cops came over. They wanted to make sure that Alexa was okay.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Tell her to shut up so much. But no. Tom had mentioned the earbuds, and Tom was talking about the wireless earbuds, which I think a lot of people are really looking forward to. And I know I was looking forward to them until I heard a breakdown on them. And, when I walk around, I put in one earbud, and I like to be able to hear out of my other ear what's going on around me.
Well, that's important because, for all intents and purposes, a lot of times if you put one earbud in, it's because you're using either blind square or navigation or something like that, and you have to have at least the other ear fully exposed to be able to hear for safety reasons.
Yeah, and on the subway, I'll be listening to a podcast, but I like to have that one ear just to hear if anybody's getting close to me, and so I was listening to a breakdown of these new AirPods. Boy, I wish they came up with names that were just a lot further apart from each other. But these are the wireless ones, and they have some new auto pause feature that the guy loved because he said, "Oh, I take one earbud out and then the music pauses," and I'm thinking,
Oh,
that may be a problem for us voiceover users.
yeah, that's a potential showstopper there. So that's something we're gonna have to check out and address, because if that's the case, and I'll be going with a different set of wireless Bluetooth buds.
No. I mean, it's a nice feature, but hopefully you could override that one-ear auto pause feature because, that just seems. I'm hoping that there's a setting that enable auto pause or that sort of thing. But that's a showstopper for me. So don't just run out and buy these things, especially if you're like Ed and I, and a lot of times you're using just one earbud in the ear and everything until we could confirm that there's a way to override this auto pause feature.
Yeah, because that's it. I buy different Bluetooth earbuds now, and I like this particular type of one I buy. The ones I have now are the MPOW Magnetos, which is the earbuds have magnets on the side, so when you're not using them, you connect the magnets in front of your neck. And the reason I like that is if my phone rings when I separate the two earbuds and put one on my ear, when you separate the two earbuds with the magnet, it automatically answers the phone. So by the time I put that in my ear, I say hello. My conversation started.
You actually say hello when you answer a call? I thought that was like 1975 way of answering a phone.
No, I say yellow.
Yellow. Yeah, and I got this pair of earbuds now, and I'm blanking on, of course, the make and model. I've had so many pairs of Bluetooth earbuds.
Are those the Jaybirds you have, or J something or other?
The JVs or JBs. I don't like them.
Oh, JBLs, I think.
Yeah,
you have, right?
JBLs. They constantly lose the pair signal. I got them as a gift. They were about $75, $80. I was always very happy. You can find a great pair of Bluetooth earbuds for $20, $30.
Yeah, and that's what I paid for these. These were I think $20 to $30 depending on when you get them on sale on Amazon. And I noticed that Anker, ANKER,
they make quality products. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a quality company, make quality products, and it looked like they had the exact same ones under their label. So these are probably private labeled somewhere out of Japan or Korea or China, but they're great. I mean, for the money, you can't beat them, and you get a couple of pairs. And when something happens to them, you just pull the other ones out and pair them. Yeah.
Now, if you go on to Amazon and enter Bluetooth earbuds, you're going to get a billion things that come.
Oh yeah,
and you could go. Here's advice for somebody first timer. Here's the three things you want to look for. One, look for a high rating. I'd say something 4.5 or above on Amazon. Two, as a voiceover user, you're going to want to get something with a little bit of a noise cancellation to them. If you're in a loud environment, you're just able to hear everything that much better. And three, don't really look for a name brand. You don't have to go for a name brand. Just look for something that is in the $20 to $40 range, and I'm sure there's a ton of different kinds you could find. I've had so many different kinds that I don't remember any of the brand names because they're not mainstream brands.
Nope, but you can get good quality. So in the show notes, I'll put down the ones for MPOW and the ones for Anker, and if you come up with one or two, I'll put them in there as well.
Yeah.
Good. And here's something though. I mean, the one thing that is working well, and you did have the praises for iOS 10, is the ability to finally use audio destinations in the rotor.
Yeah, very important. In fact, because one thing with Bluetooth earbuds that I've noticed with over time, and maybe this is because I'm not paying, although with the $80 pair I have now, it doesn't work great with Siri. So yeah, with this audio destination before iOS 10 never worked. Every time I flicked down, audio would leave the Bluetooth headset or Bluetooth speaker and go back to the phone, and then you'd flick it back down to go back to the device, and it would never successfully repair with the device. So I was very happy in iOS 10 for the first time to notice that pairing is successful, and it's great because sometimes when you're dictating and you're using a Bluetooth headset, it doesn't get everything correctly. So it's nice now. You can quickly dictate something, flick it off, and then flick it back on.
Right. Or access Siri if you're having trouble like you were having earlier. You just go off it, use Siri and go right back to it.
Yeah, for the last year, I kept saying, "What's the point of this audio destination? The thing never properly repairs to a device." So they must have had some trouble with that. You didn't hear anybody talking about that. Another thing you didn't hear anybody talking about was something that the big guy Ed pointed out to me.
Yeah, I was thinking about it and looking at it and said, you know what? This is an issue for anybody that's gone out and paid good money for a juice pack or a Mophie case for their iPhone 6s, thinking they're going to use it with their new iPhone 7. You can use it with the iPhone 7, but you're not going to be able to use your legacy earbuds or your new earbuds.
No, because it's funny. I said, wait a minute, that can't be right. I don't have a Mophie. I bought one of those cheap cases that it works great. It just charges the phone, and it snaps on. Mm-hmm. It's got that piece of plastic. So I threw it onto the 7, and it's got the 3.5 millimeter jack on the case. But guess what? The lightning cord's not fitting through there.
Nope.
The
it doesn't line up.
Yeah, the adapter's got a lightning cord on it. So that's now not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I haven't heard anybody talk about that anywhere.
No, and this is one of the things we were when I first explained it to you. You were like, "Listen to me," and you're like, "What are you talking about?"
I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to remind me that the brain you need to use to think. That's the head's not just a place to rest the hat, as my dad used to say.
There you go. But the interesting thing is, and we discussed this just before the show, is okay. So now all these other cases are obsolete, but guess what case is not obsolete? Apple's own battery pack case.
That's true. I'm surprised we haven't seen this anywhere. I mean, you'd think this would be a big to-do. And
yeah. So if you bought that ugly case that Apple came out with last, what was it, January, December, or whatever, and used it on your iPhone 6s, you can use that now because that does have the Lightning jack in it, and you can plug in your new Lightning jack earbuds.
Yeah, I know somebody that got that case, and I saw it, and I was like, ugh, yeah. Why would you pay all the money for this case? And now I know why. But haven't seen any of the mainstream media. Of course, by the time this releases, they'll be all over this.
Yep. Yeah, I'll tell you something else I haven't seen a lot of people speaking about, Brian, is, we've heard a lot about the audio jack being gone and people being upset. And one of the reasons I heard that is that anybody who had TTY hardware, where you use that to communicate if you are hearing impaired, and one of the things that Apple has done now is they've built a software TTY into iOS 10. So you are now able to make TTY assisted phone calls using your iOS device, which I think is a great thing for that. So, because those devices, they're large, they're bulky, they're hard to lug around. And the ability to be able to do this now on your iOS device, I think is great for people who do need that accommodation.
Yeah, and that's TTY, not TTI, right?
I said that, didn't I?
Yeah, I'm just messing with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had an edit there, people. But so, hey, it's late on Sunday. Ed's got to be at work early tomorrow. Hey, get in the contest. We'll be announcing the winners on our next October 7th show. And who knows, on that show, we may have a very, very special guest.
Let's not put too much out there, but hopefully that'll take place because you know what, Brian? That's going to be our 1-year anniversary show.
That's right. Our 1-year anniversary show. I didn't know if we'd make it to a year.
I didn't know if we'd make it through a month.
Is that a shot at me?
No.
Don't make me walk into management's and complain about you.
Oh, okay.
Wait, you are
send him a text. No, I'll tell you what, it's almost a year. This is episode 25. We're wrapping up here. That'll be episode 26. And I'll tell you, it's been an incredible run, my friend. We've met some great people over the year.
Yes, we have. I've learned that there are more countries than just the United States, so it's also been very educational.
Your high school geography teacher would be proud.
Hey, I got A's in high school geography.
That's because you were on the baseball team.
They had to keep my grades up, so I was eligible to play.
There you go. Absolutely.
So, yeah, hard to believe. We're as long as Ed and I don't get run over or hit by a cab before October 7th, we will make it to a year. But I guess for now, Ed, we are out.
You have been listening to iAccessVO. If you'd like to contact us with ideas and suggestions for future podcasts, please email us at iAccessVO@gmail.com or visit our website at www.accessquest.org.